This video will show you how to give feedback to your buddy to help him or her improve. So what is language feedback? Broadly speaking, it's any information you provide to your student in response to their attempts to speak English. Language feedback can show the student if you are listening to them carefully and if you understand them. Are you making an eye contact or looking away? Are you responding, or wow, this is so cool, can you tell me more? As you can see from the examples, language feedback can be both verbal and nonverbal. Verbal feedback includes changing the emphasis or intonation when you speak, as well as the specific things you say. Nonverbal feedback can be gestures, body language, or facial expressions. Learners get things wrong for different reasons. Sometimes they just slip up, but at other times they make mistakes because they are really confused or have missed the point. Slips happen when a learner knows the language, but due to the speed of conversation or other factors, they say something incorrect. These are often self-corrected or ignored, which is not the same about mistakes, where guidance and support is needed. Sometimes, particularly in fluency activities, it's better not to pay attention to learners' errors, so that the learners have an opportunity to develop their confidence in fluency and to experiment with the language. Remember to keep error correction relevant and make sure that your students benefit and learn from it. Correcting every single mistake is not only demoralizing for the learner, but also inefficient. The learner will be overloaded and won't possibly pay attention to and learn from all of the mistakes. You certainly need to correct errors associated with the goal of the activity. For example, if the task is aimed at telling about past experience, correcting past simple tense mistake is necessary here. Of the others, you need to decide which are the most important ones to correct and which can be ignored at the moment. Certainly, those which prevent communications are more important than those which do not. For example, missing the final S of the verb in the present simple tense instead of the past simple tense can hinder communication and needs correction. How do we decide when to correct? For fluency-focused activities, volunteers can correct right away those grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation mistakes that are impeding communication but in general can hold other issues until the end of the speaking-based activity. Instead of interrupting the conversation, you can either take notes or type the correction in the chat for visual representation, and then go back to it at the end of the activity. Commenting on all of the mistakes made by the learner at the end of the session can also be used, but such delayed feedback is proven to be less efficient. Besides, it's very beneficial to keep records of the most frequently made mistakes that can be shared with the learner for the analysis outside the session. And now let's talk about correction strategies. Corrective feedback is a specific form of language feedback that helps students recognize and learn from their mistakes. Using mistakes as learning opportunities is one of the best ways you can help your student. So we're going to give you 4 tools for responding to errors they make. First, we have repetition, where you repeat exactly what the student said and emphasize the mistake they made, using those verbal and nonverbal cues. The purpose of this is to indicate where the mistake is located, which gives the student a chance to focus on it and fix it on their own. For example, a student says, I have too much clothes. Using repetition, you can say, you have too much clothes, to make them aware of the mistake. Notice how I used my body language to read their intonation to this word. Next is metalinguistic feedback. This is when you pose a question or provide comments related about the grammar structures or vocabulary the student is using. For example, a student may say, for my birthday next Saturday, we go ice skating. You can give me the following metalinguistic feedback. I think that this verb needs to be in the future tense because you are talking about an upcoming experience. Or, what's the future tense of go? Another way to work with mistakes is recasting, where you repeat what the student said, correcting the mistake along the way. And the best way to deliver this is casually. So if a student says, my friends is big fans of Marvel movies, you can use recasting by saying, oh, your friends are Marvel fans? Cool. This way you don't sound overly critical and you don't waste time by prompting them to correct themselves. You can use recasting when you don't want to bring as much attention to the mistake but want to instead quickly indicate where there was a mistake and move on. Our last strategy is explicit correction. Warning. This should be reserved as a last resort and after the student attempts to provide the correct statement. So we really prefer to guide the student to the correct expression rather than answering for them. Finally, let's talk about why it's so important to correct errors. Imagine that you're trying to learn English and practicing the pronunciation of the word dinosaur. The first time you say the word, you say dinosaur, which is not correct. However, no one corrects you. You keep saying dinosaur, not knowing that it's incorrect. Eventually, you find out the correct pronunciation and try to fix your mistake. But it's too late. The incorrect pronunciation has become built into or fossilized into your mind, and you keep using it. This is why preventing fossilization is important. If a student mispronounces a word, you should correct their pronunciation right away, and not to wait for them to self-correct in the future. However, be aware that with beginner students, correcting every error would be time-consuming and discourage the learner. For beginner students, it's best to focus on the biggest mistakes, ones that you feel are the most pressing. Intermediate students can be corrected more frequently, and advanced students should be corrected with every single error.